I know what it's going to take, and I know process is the most important piece of that. So what I will say to you is I won't rush the process for a timeline. I believe in the process. I was able actually to see a pretty unique in a different sport when I was in Detroit and watched Dan Campbell, his first year, have very, very, very little success. But I watched him continue and stay strong and build a culture. And when you see those types of experience, it's a good reminder to you as a coach, you have to make sure that you get that culture in place. And once you get that culture in place, the winning takes care of itself. So I don't have an answer how long. And to be honest with you, that's not really what my worry is. My worry is making sure we do it right from day one, and we continue to do it right on a day-by-day basis.
Welcome into the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. That was the 42nd head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, Jeff Blashill, at his introductory press conference on Tuesday morning. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. We are brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. So Blashill, with that soundbite that we started the podcast with, he's always going to be asked about timeline. And those are, interesting because when you're in a rebuild, timelines get a little gray or blurred along the way. But he wants to make sure that the process is right. And there was a lot of good things to take away from the Blashill introductory presser. What are some of the things that stood out to you, Charlie?
Yeah, well, first, right off the bat, I think he's going to command instant respect and credibility of that locker room, mainly because of the way that he was speaking to us in the media, as far as giving each reporter eye contact, not really looking up, looking down, looking unsure of himself. He looked very direct, and he looked like he was a guy that was sure of what his plan is moving forward. And I think with his coaching resume, having been a head coach in college, juniors, minor leagues, international level, and now learning from his experience in Detroit and also Tampa Bay, I think he's going to get that credibility. But I sensed a coach that was very comfortable in his own skin, very sure of himself, very direct, and I think his message is going to get across very nicely in Chicago.
Yeah, Charlie, as you begin to look at his resume and the stops, and then you take those stops and you pair people that at those places and the success that he had at those stops along the way, and then you hear from players that played for him at various points, so many things add up to it being a really sensible hire for the Blackhawks. I really feel in a lot of ways he's built for where this rebuild is at. And the question is, can he take it to the finish line? And I will echo your sentiments. Talk about command of a room. We heard it from Tony Granato, who coached with him. We've heard it from players that played for him. Very direct. I thought he was direct and head on with all his answers. I didn't feel like it was coach speak, so to say. And I thought it was very logical, and it all kind of made sense at the end of the day. And that's kind of where I'm at when, the soundbite we started with was one of the reporters kind of asking, this town hasn't had a lot of winning as of late, and coaches don't last that long. So what's the timeline like? And his answer was a quick-witted, is that my welcome to Chicago? Which was a fantastic response, and to me shows you not only does he understand the gravity of the situation, but he also has a personality that can handle it.
For sure. To be a great head coach in any sport, not only do you have to be a mastermind at that respective sport, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, you also have to be able to be a leader of men. And Blashill comes across like not just a good X's and O's coach. He seems like he can command a room. He can lead a group of 23 players on this Blackhawks roster moving forward that is going to be able to handle the young players, the veterans, how to marry the two, how to institute a winning culture into this locker room and elevate the individual play of each player. I loved his answer when he was talking about that, specifically about how do you balance developing and winning. And he said, well, if we can improve each individual's ceiling, our ceiling as a team is going to also increase. And so I love how he was able to shed some light on his logic and how he's going to be able to marry the two as the Blackhawks look to take the next several steps in their rebuild.
So the entire Jeff Blashill introductory press conference, along with Kyle Davidson's remarks, that's available on the CHSN YouTube page. I sat down with Jeff Blashill following that press conference and had this 10-minute conversation, and we hit on a variety of topics. Here it is.
I am with the new head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, Jeff Blashill. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excited.
Has it sunk in?
Yeah, it's starting to. It has a little bit, but certainly being here today, great to get through this. It was a fun experience, but ready to really kind of get to work.
You said in your introductory press conference, this is the exact job you wanted. Why was that the case?
Yeah, one is the people. I think ended up the research I'd done coming into this job through the interview process, both with Danny Wirtz and Kyle Davidson and his group. I really hit it off with his group and kind of have a shared vision of where we want to go. And two would be the player pool, like really excited about the group of players we have and certainly a young group, but I think there's talent at each position, potential at each position to really be difference makers with also depth. So that's always an exciting time as a coach. And then three would just be my experiences through coaching. And to me, the different experiences I've had, both leading into my time in the NHL, my time in the NHL, both as a head coach, as an assistant, I think led me to be really a kind of perfect fit for this job and for the job to be a perfect fit for me.
What would you say your coaching philosophy is, and has it changed from your time in Detroit?
Well, it certainly, I think anytime you have a chance to go to a new experience like I did in Tampa, there's certainly tweaks and you learn different things. And sometimes it's just a reminder of what's important, a reminder of what you need to be really good at. One of the things that I think Jon Cooper does an excellent job in Tampa is he really connects with his players. He's able to hold them accountable, but still have that connection. And I think when I've been at my best, that's what I've done as well. And so just a reminder of how important it is to make sure you build those relationships. When those relationships are built, then you can be very demanding, like you have to be as a coach, but you kind of are on the same page. Schematically, the philosophy, foundation of hockey to me has kind of stayed the same. And it really starts with fundamentals and kind of those winning fundamentals and habits. And that'll be a critical piece, especially for our group, because we do have a lot of young players. We're implementing those fundamentals, those winning type habits, so that no matter what we do system-wise, they have those good fundamentals within the system.
I was talking with one of your former players who you coached in the Worlds yesterday, and he said, Blash is straightforward, and he held us accountable. And that's something that we needed, especially a team like that at the Worlds that has some talent from around the National Hockey League. How important is accountability, even when you're in a developmental process?
Critical. And I think, making sure that you kind of create a standard and make it clear to everybody what that standard is. Once you make that clear, it's then easy to kind of hold guys accountable. They know what's allowed, what's not allowed. There's certain non-negotiables that no matter who the player is, what the player's name is, they have to uphold those standards, uphold that kind of championship level. And honestly, as you kind of go through the education process of it, the players understand that that's how you win. And really, in the end, they want that. The players want to win at the highest level, and to do that, I think as you go through that education process, they know they need that level of accountability. And for me, it's about being direct and honest with players and telling them when they're on that path to greatness and when they're not on that path to greatness, and same thing for our team.
Well, we certainly hope Connor Bedard's on the path to greatness. Have you had a chance to communicate with him at all? And you were asked in the introductory press conference about helping him take the next step, take his game to the next levels.
Mm-hmm. I have had a chance to talk to Connor, certainly an important phone call. I thought it was a good start for us. want to build a really good relationship with him as well as all our players. And one of the things with Connor is he's just very, very driven. Everybody I've talked to talks about how driven he is, how much he wants to be a great player, how much he thinks about hockey. And honestly, the great ones that I've been around, that's what they do. And so ultimately Connor will become a great player because Connor wants to do that. Where I'm going to help him is learning those ways to not just become a great offensive player, but also become a winner and do all the little things it takes at the NHL level, not at levels underneath, but at the NHL level to make sure that we mold him and all our young players to have those championship kind of characteristics, those fundamentals that it takes to be great.
Do you see anything with your time with 𝗦cije 𝗵𝗶 and his style of play that you could take and help bring to Connor's game, or just things that approaches he takes?
Yeah, certainly my time with 𝗏𝗏 is extremely valuable. He's a super unique player in the league, one of the very, very best players. Wants to win to an extraordinary level, but also wants to be great. So all those things I think can help then myself pass some of those things on to Connor. They're somewhat similar in players in the sense that they're going to create separation a lot of times with their mind. They're going to create separation with getting into the right spots at the right time, but they both have really, really good ability with the puck in that offensive zone from a shooting and a passing standpoint. So there are similarities between the two. Certainly, the experience that I've gone through with 𝗏𝗏 and a number of other players I can help apply to Connor and other guys on our team. Development's
such a big component of this rebuild. What do you look at as your role in the development?
I think it's a huge piece of it. I was asked earlier about the balance between winning and development, and I think they go absolutely hand in hand. I think the best way to help your team get better is to develop your players and help them reach their fullest potential. That's how it kind of pushes your ceiling up. And so for me, in order to not just our young players either, but all our players to continue in their development, number one, getting them to understand that they have to own their development because they're the most important people in the process. So they have to come to work every day to get better, not just get by. But two, help guide them in that, help create the routines needed to get there, help develop little drills for each player and a development plan for each player to maximize their potential.
You confirmed that Michael Peca is a part of your coaching staff, that Anders Sorensen will be back, Jimmy Waite continues as goaltending coach. You plan to add another assistant with experience. What do you expect the roles for Sorensen and Peca to be?
We'll get there eventually with our whole staff and kind of decide what each guy is going to do specifically. Anders will certainly work with our defensemen, in their kind of development. Pecs will certainly have a big role in the development of our forwards. Those are two that are kind of defined already. Special teams will divvy out, but we'll also, I will certainly empower our coaching staff. I think it's a critical piece. It's something I thought Jon Cooper did a very good job of in Tampa. And so that means giving each coach an area of the game to make sure they own. One will have a defensive zone, one will have a neutral zone, one will have an offensive zone, and that they own those zones. When the meetings, when we're going to give a meeting in that area, they'll run those meetings. It gives them a bigger voice. I think it invigorates the coaches, and it also means when I do step in, my voice is bigger. So I'm excited about the opportunity to have guys on staff that I really trust, that I believe in, that I know can guide or really push our message forward.
Being in Tampa, you haven't had a lot of head-to-head opportunities to watch the Blackhawks. How much have you seen them, especially late in last season, and what we saw in the Worlds from Frank Nazar and Alex 𝗏𝗏?
Yeah, no, the Worlds was great. It was great to see, great for the U.S. to come away with that goal. It's been a long time coming. I've been a part of a lot of those staff, so I was super excited about that. Both Frank and Alex played very well in the games that I watched. I had a chance to watch the entire gold medal game, and I thought they played excellent. Had a chance to go back and watch a number of the games at the end of the year when some of the young players came and played, Sam Rinzel and Oliver Moore. So kind of as that young kind of core was in games that were important for other teams. The Montreal game stands out to me as a game that Montreal needed to win, and I thought the group played really well. And so you can see the makings of a team that has an opportunity to continue to build and get better. and that's going to be our focus. And you know, I don't know what that timeline is. I don't know what that timeline looks like, but I know that we're going to keep focused on our process, making sure that we're process driven to getting to building this team into a championship level team.
Yeah, how big a challenge is that? Especially you've gone through it in Detroit, their rebuild, and not every rebuild is the same. And this one, I think you enter at a point where it's ascending, unlike having to go through the top to the bottom like you did in Detroit. That being said, how do you manage expectations that come with a rebuild, coupled with everybody wanting to see an ascension up the standings?
Yeah, and that part I understand totally, and certainly not every rebuild's different, and the timing of you know, these two are certainly different in my eyes. But you know, I just think it's a matter of keeping everybody focused on that process part of it, and making sure that just judging wins and losses, and I get wins and losses are important, but in the short term, if you just judge wins and losses, the emotion of that clouds your judgment as to whether you're doing things right or not. And so I think being solution-based, not short-term solution, but long-term solution-based, making sure we're working towards those long-term solutions, continuing to get better in those areas, and not letting a few wins in a row cloud our judgment of whether we're doing it right, not letting a few losses in a row cloud our judgment of whether we're doing it right. That'll be the biggest key.
Lastly, your message to the Blackhawks faithful out there that will be filling this United Center and giving you goosebump moments with the anthem. Your message to them about what a Jeff Blashill coach Blackhawks team is going to produce.
Yeah, I think number one, when we don't have the puck, we're going to be a pressured team. We're going to try to force the other team to cough up the puck, give us turnovers, whether it's through forecheck or whether it's even in D-zone coverage or through tracking and gapping. And we want to make sure we're a pressure team in those areas. And when we have the puck, we want to make sure we're predictable to each other so we can play fast. And what that'll look like is just, if at its best, it looks like a relentless attack where we're utilizing our speed so we can create chances off the rush. We're utilizing ozone and forecheck to then create almost a half-ice game where they give us the puck and we jam it back down their throats. It doesn't look like that every night, but that's what it looked like in a perfect world.
Can't wait for training camp.
Same.
Thanks for doing this. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, Charlie, let's kind of break down what we just heard. And he said it in the press conference. This was the exact job that he wanted. And there's so many things that are attractive to him. By and large, it seems to me it's the talent that has already been accumulated and the talent that he has seen already, whether it's in person when they played the Lightning, whether it's on tape, or whether it was just at the Worlds when he saw Frank Nazar and Alex 𝗏്լasić win gold for the U.S. for the first time in 92 years.
Yeah, like obviously the Blackhawks they're still in the middle stages of the rebuild, that where it's still going to take a few years for the Blackhawks to really position themselves to be perennial playoff contenders. But the hardest parts about a rebuild is getting a cornerstone franchise player, check, in Connor Bedard. But then you look at some of the defenseman crops that the Blackhawks are assembling with Sam Rinzel, Artem Levshunov, and Alex 𝗏lasić. And then, oh, by the way, Jeff Blashill, who is a former goaltender as a player, the Hawks end up getting Spencer Knight. And so he's probably looking at these pieces like number one center or number one franchise forward, number one defenseman in Levshunov and Rinzel, either or of those, and then a potential number one goaltender in Spencer Knight. You know, check, and check. But it's still going to take a while for those players to develop into the players to kind of hit their NHL ceilings. But I think Blashill is looking at the situation like, if we can develop those players in the next couple years and those players do reach their ceilings, this Blackhawks group, especially this core group, has the potential to be something special. And I think that's why maybe some of the experienced head coaching options that were on the market, like a Mike Sullivan or a John Tortorella, probably looked at the Blackhawks job thinking they're still a little bit far away for me. But Blashill looked at it like, okay, I can work with these younger players, and once I do help them develop into their full potential, what this Blackhawks ceiling could be as a group could be pretty special.
And one of the players at the top of that list would be Connor Bedard. And I asked him, if they've communicated. I was expecting a text, already a phone conversation. Doesn't surprise me the way he attacks things head on. And I think he brings, we talk about the skill set of the Red Wings rebuild and, being at the very end of their run where they had the aging veterans, and then there for the start of the rebuild. And, it never really got to a trending in an upward trajectory with any significance in the following 6 years. But he saw some of the pitfalls, the things that didn't work. We talked about the fact that, they didn't have the luxury of some of the top picks that the Blackhawks had, and they didn't have the luxury of multiple picks in first and second rounds that we've seen already. When Kyle Davidson used to say, the old saying was you look to find one player a draft. It looks like the Hawks are finding multiple players in the first round out of a draft. So, we'll see where that goes. But I thought it was great to hear that he's already been in contact with Connor Bedard. And then you factor in, his experience in Tampa and what it was like with Stamkos before he left, and Kucherov. And I asked him specifically, are there things you can take from coaching Kucherov and apply it to Connor's game? And he said, absolutely.
Yeah, and even he singled out Brayden Point as well in his actual press conference, just as a guy that's an undersized forward that has made an incredible impact in the NHL. Obviously, different players stylistically, but Blashill will be able to take some of what he's learned from being around those superstars in Tampa Bay and apply them to Chicago. And like you mentioned, he didn't really get an opportunity in Detroit to mold some of those players, because even the superstars that were on Detroit's roster in 𝗵𝗹 𝗟𝗀 and Henrik Zetterberg, they were at the very, very end of their NHL careers. And so I imagine he learned a ton, not just being around John Cooper in Tampa Bay and learning what it's like to just absorb him as a head coach and taking what he can apply to his own, but also being around those types of players, what it takes to establish a winning culture like that. Even a guy like Victor Hedman on the back end, I think is going to be invaluable experience that Blashill had in Tampa Bay with Cooper.
Accountability. It's something that also goes along with development. And even though you're a young player, you got to be held accountable. He pointed out in the presser, even when you're Nick Foligno, you need to be held accountable. Where can we take your game at this stage of your career? I spoke to a player yesterday who played for Blashill in the Worlds, and he talked about the direct approach Jeff had, and he also talked about the accountability that he held the veterans to. Now, you think about a U.S. team in the Worlds, you're not dealing with a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, by and large, you're dealing with all-star caliber players and also probably some young, thriving talent that are on teams that aren't ready for postseason play as of yet. So probably in a rebuild mode. He said that it's exactly what that team needed. Those veterans and those all-stars being held accountable. And he did that. I love hearing that, because if you can do it with the veteran, that means you can do it with the young player as well.
100%. And with the Blackhawks, Blashill is going to have like a long rope to lay the foundation, in training camp and in the offseason, like all these kind of milestones, right? At the Worlds, you go in there, you get all these players from all different teams, and it's a small, tight tournament. And so you need instant respect from immediate buy-in from the players. And it sounds like he got that. And I think it's hard not to listen or watch the Jeff Blashill press conference and just see the aura that he has. Even I was really impressed where his opening statement was like 3, 4, 5 minutes long. I don't know how long it was, no notes. He's just staring at everyone, and it's off the top. Like that goes a long way too. When it's not rehearsed or not, when it's coming straight from the heart, he's going to be able to translate that message inside the locker room, and it's gonna stick in some players' brains. I don't think that should go unnoticed.
How about the way he handled the audio glitch? There was a point where the speakers kind of blew out in the forefront of the atrium, and he rolled with that and made some jokes and kind of switched microphones around. And he's like, I can speak real loud. Like, I mean, he was throwing a couple of curveballs, and he had no problem getting the bat on the ball and putting it in the outfield.
Yeah, he did not look flustered whatsoever in that situation. And he does have a deep voice. He does have a voice that will command a room as well. But yeah, it was just a really impressive, almost 30-minute press conference with Jeff Blashill. But again, it's not the flashiest name that the Blackhawks could have hired. But the more you dig into it, the more you see, the more that his background, it feels like, is going to hold some instant credibility to that Blackhawks locker room. I think the more fans are going to start to come around it. And so I thought Blashill did a really nice job of winning over the press conference today.
Blashill did confirm that Anders Sorensen will be back and that Michael Pekka will be joining his staff. We've talked about Pekka on the previous podcast, one of the great two-way centers of the late 90s, early 2000s, played in, I think, 900 games or around there. When he is conducting meetings with the forwards, his body of work speaks for himself. So he already has the respect of the room for being a two-time 𝗏𝗀𝗃 winner and what he achieved as a player. And then you look at his pedigree coaching, and you realize that he's also taken steps to get to this spot, to be with Blashill. And, I thought it was interesting that he said that Sorensen is going to handle the defense, and that obviously Jimmy Waite stays on. He's had a handle on the goaltending situation for several years now and several different head coaches. And then they still plan on adding that assistant with experience. And, we have heard that name, Mike Vellucci, who carries quite a lot of weight, has not been finalized yet, but that could be the final piece to the assistant staff.
Yeah, Blashill was saying that they're pretty close to finalizing the staff. So maybe we'll get an official word of what the entire staff could look like in the next few weeks. By the way, it sounds like Kevin Dean is moving on. He did fantastic job for the Blackhawks in developing their young defensemen. So we wish him well in his next endeavor. But
and congrats for him being a part of the U.S. gold medal winning team at the Worlds.
Absolutely. I'm sure he played a big part in that as well, because he was a big part of the success that Boston had as well a few years prior to him joining the Blackhawks. But I like how the staff is rounding out. Michael Pekka dealing with the forwards, I think, is going to be a huge benefit, given all the qualifications that you just mentioned about his respect that he gained as a player and being a two-way centerman. I think he's going to be able to translate that message and be able to. He's young enough where he can relate to this generation, but also there's still room for him to grow as an assistant, because he still is young. So it's not like this really old assistant that's coming in that has to kind of get a feel for how to communicate with these younger players. So I think Pekka will be able to do that pretty seamlessly. And then with Anders, I think it's awesome. Did not realize that Blashill actually had a built-in relationship with Sorensen. So this isn't the Blackhawks kind of forcing Sorensen down Blashill in Blashill's staff. Blashill wants Sorensen on his staff just as much. And so I think that's an important factor to continue the trust factor and the relationship that the two of them have. I was talking to Nick Foligno was in attendance for the Blashill press conference, and I asked him afterwards in the scrum about how excited he is that Sorensen is staying on the NHL coaching staff, because a few weeks prior, it was right after the draft lottery, Kyle Davidson was saying how complimentary the players were in the exit interviews of Sorensen, Nick Foligno being one of them. And you could see the excitement in Foligno's eyes that Sorensen is staying on, because his impact on a lot of these young players on their roster, it's nice that they'll have some continuity and he'll be able to continue that on the NHL staff.
It sounds like he's in lockstep with, Kyle Davidson and the hockey ops group as well. He knows that speed is a trait that this team holds in high regard. They have shown that in their drafts in recent years. We'll see, obviously, if that continues with the upcoming draft at the end of June. But he said in his presser, it's up to me to help, play and devise schemes to, take advantage of that speed. And then also on the back end, work on designing breakouts that takes advantage of the skill set that he has with his blue liners. And it sounds like that's an area that, because he was primarily defensive on the defensive side with Tampa.
Yeah. And I love the fact that when he was asked about his coaching philosophy, he said, we want to be a pressure team, like aggressive forecheck. We want our defensemen to jump in. Like, we want to force the opponents to make mistakes. And that starts with an aggressive forecheck, right? Making those defensemen go back for pucks on a chip in. You want to make sure that they feel like there's going to be a Blackhawk that's coming hard for that puck and force them into making mistakes. And so, I just thought it was a really strong press conference. I think the fans that are a little skeptical of Blashill aren't going to be, he's not going to win them over in a press conference, but I thought it was a great start. I think it's going to help lay the groundwork for training camp. So when the guys do come in, there's already that built-in message and the identity that Blashill wants his teams to play.
And again, I've said it before in this podcast, I'm not a guy that carries a lot of weight when it comes to winning the press conference. I don't look at it. Now, he won the press conference today, but it's the way you communicate with those at that press conference that I take away from. Is your message succinct? Does it make sense? Is it clear? Are you able to convey it? These are all things that on a daily basis he's going to have to do with 23 individuals, plus a coaching staff, plus other staff members of this organization, all trying to get on the same spot towards a trajectory to a championship. And at the end, I think at first blush, he nails all those things. And you said it earlier, can he command a room? Absolutely. He commanded that room at the United Center, and I don't see him having any difficulties commanding the room at Fifth Third, United Center, or anywhere else around the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I asked a question, and he did not break eye contact with me his entire answer, and I was like pretty intimidated by that, because I mean, not intimidated, but like he was like, I was thrown off by it because of how direct and you can feel that message getting across. And so I agree. I had called Tyler Bertusi and 𝗵cie Chelios last week for a feature that ran on the Blackhawks website, because Bertusi spent 6 years under Blashill, even the year prior in the AHL when Blashill was the Grand Rapids head coach, and Bertusi helped lead them to a Calder Cup with his playoff run. And then 𝗵cie Chelios was on the staff of Blashill's in Grand Rapids for 2 years, kind of like as a temporary development coach, like working closely with the young defensemen. Both of them were very complimentary of Blashill's hockey acumen, but also the way that he cares about players off the ice, families, what's going on in your personal life. And I think that's a key element in to be a head coach in the NHL these days, is to try to see what makes a player tick and not just solely focus on the hockey aspect. Like getting personal and getting to know these guys on a personal level off the ice, I think is massive. And like 𝗵cie Chelios had mentioned to me, he's almost like a manager in the way that he manages players and the way he cares about them. So Like Bertusi's quote was, he cares a lot about players, but when it's go time on the ice. And so for Chicago, it feels like they're getting a really, not just a good man as a person, but also a head coach, so that they're going to get both of those.
Connor Murphy, Nick Foligno were there. You got a chance to catch up with the captain. Anything that Foligno had to say? Yeah,
Foligno has talked a lot about playing with an identity the last couple of years. And I think he feels that Blashill is going to be able to help establish that identity for the Blackhawks and make sure that the Blackhawks are following it. He, again, tripled down and was clear that he wasn't trying to single anyone out, but he was saying, we really want players that want to be here, right? And so I think when you get a coach that is signing up to be part of this rebuild and wants to advance this rebuild forward with the Blackhawks, and you're going to start adding some younger pieces via free agency or trades of players that actually want to be here in Chicago, Foligno seemed optimistic that the Blackhawks are going to be able to play closer to what their identity is now that they have the permanent head coach, and as more of the younger players become full-time players, because these are the players that are going to want to be here in the long run.
All right. Anything else as we wrap things up?
I think we covered it. Great job by you, by the way, rolling with on CHSN, and great job with the Blashill interview too.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to the new head coach of the Blackhawks, and the foundation has been laid. The messages have been sent and will be continued to be sent to the players as they reconvene for training camp in a few months. And then we'll see what happens on the ice. But for today, it was nice to catch up with the latest head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. That'll do it for the Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will catch you next time.